The applause felt like static, like something happening in a room I wasn't really in. I watched my boss shake her hand, watched the smile spread across his face like he'd done something good, and all I could think was, he never even glanced in my direction. Not once. I had given that company 14 months of my life. Nights, weekends, dawn phone calls I answered without hesitation. I had held a project together with my bare hands when every piece of it wanted to fall apart. And in the 30 seconds it took for my boss to say someone else's name, all of it was rewritten, like I had never existed. My name is Celeste Harmon, and this is a story of the best thing that ever happened to me. Disguise is the worst. Let me take you back to where it started. 14 months before I walked out, I was standing at my workstation at Halcyon Systems, a mid-sized precision manufacturing company in Denver, when my manager, Derek Voss, pulled up a chair beside me. He had that look he got when he was about to say something he wanted you to remember. Celeste, he said, you're the only one I trust with this. The Meridian Integration Project, a high-complexity overhaul for a medical device client worth north of $200,000 per quarter. New tolerances, new workflows, new everything. 6 months of pressure cooker work that would touch every department in operations. And then he said it. Finish this clean, 0 deviations, and the operations program supervisor role is yours. I looked at him. Officially? He didn't hesitate. Officially, I want you to understand what those words meant to me at that point in my life. I had spent the previous year rebuilding after a painful divorce. I had moved to Denver knowing almost no one, starting over at 34 with 2 suitcases, and a resume I was proud of but hadn't yet been allowed to fully use. I was good at my job. I knew I was good. I just needed someone to say out loud, in writing with a title attached. Derek gave me that moment, and I grabbed it with both hands. From that day, my life narrowed to one thing. My friends stopped inviting me places because the answer was always the same, working late. My mother called one Sunday and said, "Honey, you sound like you haven't slept in a week." She wasn't wrong. The Meridian project was exactly as complicated as advertised. Tight tolerances, a client with high standards and 0 tolerance for delays. Design revisions that kept coming in waves. Twice, I thought the whole thing was going to collapse. The first crisis hit when a key supplier missed a shipment by 11 days. The second hit when a design engineer uploaded the wrong revision to the shared drive, and we didn't catch it until 48 hours before a scheduled client review. Both times, Derek called me before the sun came up. "Celeste, fix it." And I did. I rerouted the supply chain, negotiated emergency timelines, stayed on the phone for hours with a client who was ready to pull the contract entirely. When the storm passed each time, Derek would walk into the production meeting and say something like, "The team really showed its resilience this week." He'd say decisive leadership kept us on track. He never looked in my direction when he said it. I confronted him about it once, early on. You could acknowledge what actually happened in there. I told him quietly after a meeting. He waved a hand. "Everyone knows you're reliable. Celeste, you'll get your moment." And I believe him. Every hour I gave, every fire I put out, every client call I smoothed over, I cashed all of it as a down payment on the future he promised me. I told myself I was building something. I told myself it was worth it. By the end of month 5, the Meridian Integration Project was done. Not just finished, flawless. Every tolerance met. Every delivery landed early. The client's quality director called me directly on a Thursday afternoon, and her voice had that warmth people get when they've been genuinely surprised. "Celeste," she said, "you saved this rollout. We've never seen an integration run this clean. I'm sending a formal commendation letter to your leadership team." I felt something settle in my chest that hadn't been there in months. Something that felt like proof. The letter arrived 2 days later. Derek opened it before I did. "Good work," he said, already folding it. "I'll include this in the quarterly report." I reached out my hand. "I'd like a copy of that." "I'll forward it," he said, already walking away. He did forward it. Eventually, but a week later, I was passing the conference room, and I saw him reviewing his leadership presentation. And I saw my words in there, my process outlines, my timelines, My language, rearranged into paragraphs under a heading that said Leadership Achievements. My name appeared once in a footnote, in a font size that required squinting. I stepped inside. Derek, that's my work you're presenting. He didn't look up. I'm presenting the department's work. It's not formatting, Derek. It's credit. He exhaled. The promotion conversation is coming. Everything will make sense then. I wanted to believe him. Around me, co-workers were already treating me like the announcement was a formality. One of the machinists stopped by my desk 2 days before the division meeting and said, "You're next. Everyone knows it." An engineer gave me a quiet thumbs up in the hallway. On the morning of the meeting, I smoothed the front of my blazer and thought, this is it. This is what I worked for. I walked into that conference room ready. Derek stood at the front with his rehearsed confidence, the posture of a man about to deliver a gift. Before we begin, he said, I want to recognize someone stepping into a critical leadership role. I sat up straighter. Simone Brightwell will be our new operations program supervisor. A murmur moved through the room. Simone, who had been with Halcyon Systems for less than 2 months, blinked as if she needed a moment to process what she'd just heard. She stood up carefully. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm really excited to, dig into the Aurora systems and all the machining deliverables. I've been reading about some of the retrofit metrics, and I think there's a lot of synergy potential. Someone coughed. An engineer stared at his shoes. She had used the wrong project name. She didn't know the terminology. She kept talking, filling the silence with enthusiasm and nothing else. When she finished, Derek led the applause. I sat very still. My hands didn't move. After the meeting, 2 veteran technicians found me in the hallway. Celeste, one of them said, that should have been you. Everyone in that room knows it. The second one just shook his head. I'm sorry. This is wrong. I thanked them. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Derek intercepted me before I reached the exit. He put a hand briefly on my arm. Be a team player, Celeste. Help guide Simone. She's still adjusting. Adjusting to what? His voice dropped. Don't make this difficult. Simone has strong backing from corporate. You understand how these things work. I looked at him for a long moment. He didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He spoke as if nothing had been promised, as if nothing had been taken, as if I was the one making the situation awkward. Behind him, Simone smiled at me from across the room, bright and warm and completely unaware. That was the moment something inside me went very quiet that I found Derek alone in his office after the meeting. I closed the door behind me that we need to talk. I said that if this is about Simone, let it go. The company's needs shifted. You promised me that role. You tied it to the Meridian project, which I completed without a single deviation. That he finally looked up. I never made a formal promise. We discussed possibilities. I reached into my bag and set my phone on his desk. I had every email, including the one where he wrote, in plain text, complete Meridian with 0 deviations and the supervisor role is yours. Derek stared at the screen. His jaw tightened. I don't recall sending that. It's your email address, Derek. He pushed the phone away with 2 fingers. You're being emotional. You should take pride in being indispensable. The best operations teams run on people like you. Reliable, consistent, steady. I let that sit for a second. Reliable, consistent, steady. I repeated. Yes, that's a compliment. You mean invisible. His mouth pressed into a line. You're making something small into something dramatic. I worked nights and weekends because you told me it would define my future. And it did, he said, his voice sharpening. Your performance puts you in a strong position here. Don't throw that away over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. You never intended to follow through. He opened his mouth, and then nothing came out. That was the first time I had seen Derek Voss without an answer. He was used to managing people the way he managed reports, with just enough language to keep them moving in the right direction, never enough to actually commit to. Looking at him in that silence, I finally saw the whole structure clearly. I had been very useful, and useful people in Derek's world didn't get promoted. They got maintained. I wrote the resignation letter in less than 2 minutes. 2 lines, clear and final. When I printed it, The paper felt lighter than it should have, like the weight I'd been carrying had quietly let go. Derek was on a call when I stepped into his office. He held up a finger. I didn't wait. I placed a letter in front of him. He ended the call mid-sentence. "What is this?" "My resignation." Effective immediately. His face moved through several expressions at once. "Celeste, stop. You're not doing this. You're upset. Sit down." "No." He tore the letter open. "Read it fast. This is ridiculous. You don't quit over one decision." "It wasn't one decision," I said. "It was every decision that led here." He pushed back from his desk. So abruptly his chair hit the cabinet behind him. "You can't walk out. You're essential to Meridian's ongoing maintenance. Simone is nowhere near ready. The clients depend on you." "That sounds like your problem," I said. "Not mine." Panic came next, quick and unfiltered. "Celeste, think about stability. Think about your future. No other firm hires someone who walks out under pressure." There it was. The last card. I stepped back toward the door. "I'm not the one under pressure, Derek." He stood there gripping the letter, breathing hard, finally understanding, in a way that hadn't been real to him until that moment, exactly what he had lost. I turned and walked out, and for the first time in 14 months, the air felt like mine again. I had been gone 3 days when the first message came in. It was from Simone. "Hi, Celeste. Do you have a second? I'm trying to interpret an engineering change order, and I think I'm reading it wrong." I stared at the screen. She had been handed a job she hadn't earned, and now she was standing in the middle of processes she didn't understand, looking for the person who actually built them. I replied simply, "I can't assist. You'll need to speak with Derek or the engineering lead." Less than an hour later, a message came in from Halcyon's primary aerospace client. "Celeste, we're seeing delays and conflicting status updates. Can you clarify what's happening on Halcyon's end? I'm no longer with Halcyon Systems. You'll need to contact the current operations supervisor." A pause. Then, "That explains a lot." By that afternoon, my phone was quiet in a different way. The kinds of messages I never expected started appearing. A scheduler, a machinist, a quality engineer, each one some variation of the same thing. Things are falling apart, and nobody knows who's responsible for what. I didn't respond. I wouldn't be pulled back into something that had already taken so much from me. But one message I did respond to, because it came from above Derek entirely. "Celeste," it read, "this is Renato Ose, VP of Operations. I need to verify something. Were you the primary project lead on Meridian?" I wrote back. "I managed all workflows, client communications, supplier coordination, and quality oversight for the full duration of the project." Her reply came quickly. "Thank you. That aligns with what we're beginning to uncover." Uncover. That word sat with me for the rest of the day. The call came on a Wednesday, 6 weeks after I left Halcyon. A number I didn't recognize. "Is this Celeste Harmon?" "Yes. My name is Marcus Fell. I'm a program director at Pinnacle Operations Group. We were given your name by a medical device client who spoke at length about your work on the Meridian integration project." I sat down slowly. "I appreciate that. I'm no longer with Halcyon. That's exactly why I'm calling. We have a program lead opening. Real authority, real autonomy, and compensation that reflects the level of work we'd expect from you. I'd like to talk, if you're open." I steadied my voice. "You want an interview?" "No," he said. "I want you. The client said you held a $200,000 a quarter integration together, without a single deviation. People who can do that aren't common." I didn't speak for a moment, not because I was unsure, because I was realizing very slowly how small Derek had kept the ceiling above my head. We set a time. The interview lasted 2 hours. Marcus asked me one question that stopped me cold. "What do you need in order to do your best work?" No one at Halcyon had ever asked me anything close to that. By end of day, they offered me the position. I accepted it with a steadiness I didn't know I had. My first week at Pinnacle passed without a single crisis call. No dawn texts. No fires to put out before breakfast. I felt, for the first time in over a year, like a full person, not a patch for everyone else's mistakes. But the past has a way of finding its closing chapter. 2 months into my new role, I received an email from an internal audit address at Halcyon. The subject line read, Documentation Review, Meridian Integration. The auditor's name was Calvin Reese. When I answered his call, he sounded almost relieved. Thank you for speaking with me. We found significant discrepancies in the quarterly reports filed under Mr. Voss's leadership on the Meridian project. Budget numbers appear inflated. Several process improvements were attributed to his oversight, but all supporting documentation traces back to you. I can provide complete records, I said. Every email, every log, every audit sheet. Nothing altered. Please do. Your transparency is going to be critical to this review. I spent that evening sending organized files, the full paper trail of 14 months, every piece of it exactly as it happened. 2 days later, Calvin called back. The board has been informed, he said. And there's more. Simone Brightwell has acknowledged she was placed in the supervisor role under pressure from a senior contact at corporate, without the qualifications a position required. That opens another review entirely. I had no part in any of that. We know, he said, Derek Voss will be facing formal hearings. I hung up feeling something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not bitterness. Just settled, like a long equation that had finally balanced. The final message from Halcyon came on a Monday morning, tucked between supplier quotes and project updates in my new inbox. I almost missed it. Derek Voss has been terminated following confirmation of fraudulent reporting and misattribution of project deliverables. He is prohibited from holding senior operations leadership positions for 3 years. I read it twice. Then I set aside and got back to work. A letter arrived at Pinnacle's front desk a week later, forwarded from a contact at Halcyon. 2 engineers had co-signed it. I unfolded it at my desk. Thank you for never bending your integrity to match the politics around you. We stayed because we believed in people like you. We hope your new team sees your worth in ways ours never did. I folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer. No speeches, no announcements, just a quiet truth settling into place. Derek hadn't been undone by anything I did. He was undone by the weight of what he'd borrowed, credit, work, trust, and never intended to repay. Eventually, borrowed things find their way home. At Pinnacle, I lead a multi-million-dollar operations program. My team asks my opinion. They credit my work. They treat me like someone who belongs at the table, not in the margins of someone else's report. I think about that moment in the conference room sometimes. The applause, the handshake, my hands perfectly still in my lap. I thought it was the end of something. It wasn't. It was the exact moment I stopped waiting for someone else to decide what I was worth. Walking away from Halcyon was the first promise I ever kept to myself. And that promise has paid back every single thing it cost. If this story made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever been the person in that conference room, watching what you built get handed to someone else, I'd love to hear your story in the comments.